Welcome to the Diversity Pivot Podcast. I'm your host, Julie Kratz, and this season we will be unpacking real trends, hot topics in the workplace around allyship and inclusion. Our goal is that each week you leave with tangible tools, information, practical strategies that you can take back to allies at your organization. Let's dig in to this week's topic. So there's been a lot of rhetoric around, is DEI going to die? Which is sad that people can rearrange the acronym that way. It never dawned on me to do so. And the good news is that even though billionaires are actively talking negatively about DEI and presidential candidates, the stark reality is that people are doubling down on DEI. Those that left the conversation continue to be out of the conversation, and my opinion of that is they weren't that serious to begin with. So if you got on board in 2020 and stayed with it, maybe 2021, and then abandoned it 22, yeah, that's kind of how things go. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The good news is, though, is that we know that social change takes time, and DEI certainly is a long game. You know, it's something that's been polarizing, politicized, and we've known since the roots of DEI work, dating back to Dr. Martin Luther King's famous quote of "the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And so it might feel like a cautionary situation where people are leaning out or divesting, but change takes time. And so if you feel a little bit of the whiplash effect of the last few years, you're not alone as a DEI leader. And we know that investment, internal investment, is stabilizing. External investment and hiring numbers are down a bit year to year, but the investment in DEI is projected to steadily increase leading into the late 2020s, and a lot of that has to do with the future workforce. By 2030, the workforce will not be majority white, and that's a reckoning that a lot of business leaders are going to have to come to, of how do we mirror and match the communities we hope to serve. Younger employees are growing up, with diversity and inclusion front and center, and see it overwhelmingly, nearly 90% as a non-negotiable. They want to work for organizations that their values are highly aligned with, and inclusion is a deep, important value for these young people. And so if we think about labor shortages, we think about the underemployment of folks with neurodiversity, disabilities, people that are caregivers, folks that are likely to experience microaggressions in the workplace, like trans folks, queer folks, folks with different identities, racial identities. There's an empathy that needs, a muscle that needs to build in the workplace. So how do we do that? If DEI is not dying, where is it going? Here's 10 ideas to consider. This is something I wrote about to kick off 2024 on Forbes, but I think it still really resonates with the key themes that we need to unpack. So first and foremost, start with the why. If your organization, your people leaders, your leadership team does not have a strong why for the work, you will absolutely ebb and flow with the news cycle. So let that emotional why flow. Business case data, plethora, just Google DEI business case and you'll find tons of research around it. I personally really like McKinsey's latest report, where they show a 39% higher likelihood of business results against industry peers. Hard to argue with that data. They've been putting it together for nearly a decade. But the business case, you can do other things to drive business outcomes, sadly, is the human case. The moral case for inclusion. We're leaving out a huge percentage of our population. We're not reflecting those people, certainly at our leadership team level. What can we do to make sure that humans have an equal chance of participating in this work environment? And that's something that's absolutely critical to business success, as well as just the human experience. So channel the why, and if you don't have a strong why, start there. The second, get leadership all in. Even just one or two naysayers on the leadership team can cause a lot of trouble. I saw this a few times last year with well-intentioned leadership teams. Like, yeah, sure, we're in. And then it became quickly, it surfaced very quickly, the meeting after the meeting, the person that's like, well, I didn't like this or that, kind of just picking the one thing. If you have the ability for people to push back on DEI at the leadership team level, it's essentially saying that's okay for everyone. So you have to make it really clear this is non-negotiable. This is a part of the expectation of working here. You don't have to change your values or beliefs, but you do need to respect the beliefs of others. And so setting that clear boundary is important. 3, change the culture first, not individuals. And we saw a lot of this where individuals were asked to, get rid of your bias, be more psychologically safe. Individual behaviors are great, but systemic issues are really the cause of poor individual behaviors. You need to address the culture. And so that means really getting clear on what inclusion needs with our existing cultural values. So if we haven't defined our values, our mission, our vision of the organization, start there and make sure DEI, of course, is woven in. But if it's already set, as most organizations have, how does inclusion fit with our existing values, mission, and vision? And being really clear about that. So it's a part of who we are, not just this thing we do once a year for training. That doesn't feel very authentic. 4, I stole this from Madupe Akinola. She spoke at a conference I went to. It was phenomenal. She said, make DEI a row, embed it in your organization, not a column, isolate it. And if you think about how org structures pivoted to support diversity, the advent of the chief diversity officer, now DEI, VP, they kind of are siloed inside the organization, and that's not how diversity works, right? It has to be embedded across all the functions. It can't be tucked away under HR, the small sliver of the leadership team. And so just being really clear about what everyone's leader's role is. And of course, you can have someone's organizing, putting together materials and communications, but that needs to be every leader's job to distribute that information. Number 5, notice the power dynamics. This was something that I also picked up from that conference, was just really thinking about who gets to speak. DEI is about noticing. Notice who's represented in leadership at meetings and in succession planning discussions. Notice who speaks more, who interrupts, who makes decisions. Chances are that's coming from more out of the dominant group, white, cisgender, non-disabled straight men, usually. Intentionally, reach out, invite those that are underestimated, ask them to speak, to be heard, look at promotion data, pay data to make sure that we're not inequitable. And that's a legal risk that we just want to be smart about, managing that before it becomes a more complicated, public expensive risk. Just smart business too, to be proactive about that. So notice the power dynamics. Notice who's allowed to do things and who's not. It's really telling, like, oh yeah, he did that again, or oh gosh, I can't believe she said that, right? Why are we treating the same behavior different based on the package of who said it? Number 6, engage the murky middle. Those middle managers, they're just starving for support and development. So many of them tell me, I feel stuck in the middle. I have to get my work done, but then I also want to make sure that my employees are happy, and I'm coaching them and giving feedback and delegating and, building human skills with them. But it's often those on the front lines who are, really leading folks from diverse backgrounds that have a disconnect. They don't know how to connect. They're not sure what to say or do. I hear all sorts of doozies about well-intentioned but harmful things that are said or go unnoticed. Really having an ear of middle management and the challenges and the things that they're hearing and saying that they may not be equipped to manage on their own. Providing tools, information, I remember leading safety in my early ops days in warehousing. We had a safety topic every day. I would love to see a world where we had an inclusion topic every day, or at least once a week in our daily startup meetings or our get-togethers. Number 7, addressed equity through sponsorship. Mentorship programs are great. A lot of companies don't even have those, but a sponsorship program is more impactful. Mentorship is a one-to-one relationship. Sponsor is a one-to-many relationship. So that domino effect is much more profound. The impact that a sponsor can make. Sponsors are in rooms where decisions are made. There's somebody that's likely to appeal, to a pay, promotion, growth opportunity experience. It's about nurturing those relationships so that when there is an opportunity that we don't continue to perpetuate, the dominant group. And we've seen sponsorship programs take hold. We've worked with organizations, Fortune 100 organizations that have done this with their senior leaders. And the senior leaders love the opportunity to get to know folks on the team they may not have gotten to know on their own. And more importantly, support their career development. Number 8, right-size the content. This is one of my favorite lessons learned from last year is we got to do a slow drip. I call it a drum beat. It's not this overwhelming diversity day, Black History Month celebration, Women's History Month celebration. Those are great, but inclusion takes root throughout the year. What are the cultural celebrations outside the dominant group that we're choosing to celebrate or highlight or educate folks on? Inclusion tips, case studies, new reports, new data that comes out. You don't have to recreate the wheel. There's lots of great content already out there. And then measure, 9, measure key performance indicators, KPIs. We measure what matters. So representation numbers, lagging indicator, but something that's important to measure. Employee engagement, inclusion perceptions, turnover rates, exit interview data, pay data. Hold leaders accountable. It's not about quotas. That's not, and we always want to hire, retain, and promote the best person for the job, but it's about diversifying the pools of candidates that we choose to hire, choose to promote, and work towards retaining, not just the dominant group that we tend to over prioritize. Last but not least, have an annual DEI report or a quarterly, a lot of, Google, large firms do this, so you can definitely see what good looks like. But for a lot of small to medium-sized companies, it's just a one-page report. It doesn't have to be a fancy document. Just simple PowerPoint Word document that says, hey, we did A, B, and C this year. And it's a powerful recruiting tool. Slide that across the table when a candidate asks about your DEI program. And it's really intentional. It's not like, oh, yeah, we have that. It's on our website. People can figure out what's authentic and what's not. So those are just 10 ideas to keep at DEI so that it doesn't die this year. Welcome your ideas as well.
Thank you for listening to the Diversity Pivot podcast. My hope is that you walked away with a tangible tool, insight, or information that you can share with other allies on the journey. If you liked this week's episode, please leave us a review. Your feedback means a tremendous amount to us. We'll be back next week with another hot topic.